Every year, thousands of human remains are found in the United States, and in one of every 4 instances, authorities can't identify the body. That's starting to change. I'm Dave Killen, co-host of The Unidentifieds, a new limited series podcast from the Oregonian and Oregon Live. We go deep into several cold cases and explain the science that's helping experts give these long-forgotten people their names back. Look for The Unidentifieds after you've finished listening to this podcast. Subscribe to The Unidentifieds on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
NIL Now with Lauren Sisler and Kevin Jones.
If you want to learn more about name, image, and likeness, you need to go to The Source. The NIL Now podcast from Headline Studio and Reddit highlights the biggest storylines with comments from key guests in the college and high school NIL space.
NIL is not a cherry on top. It needs to be thought about as a part of these young men and women's future to, further their careers. You should be able to leave college with something.
Subscribe to NIL Now on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
We're already 1 week into the month of May. We are getting through phase 1 of voluntary workouts over on the Bengals side of things. A lot is going on. The OTAs will be here before you know it. Rookie minicamp is later this week, but before we get to any of that, we want to look here and now and say, what are the things that people are getting right about the Bengals? Are they getting it right? Why are they getting it right? And why does that matter? We're going to talk about all of that here to open up this fine Monday and this fine week. Welcome into another edition of the Strictly Stripes podcast. Muhammad Ahmad, Andrew Gillis, and Mike Nizick here with you to open up another week in this awesome month of May. I'm a summer guy, so I love the month of May. And before we get into things, I want to remind you guys to sign up for our Strictly Stripes newsletter. Again, you go to cleveland.com/newsletters. It's easy. It's free to sign up. You get the best reporting, insights, and analysis in your inbox every morning from me, Mike, and Andrew. It takes a few clicks to sign up. It's very easy, and it's free. Go to cleveland.com/newsletters. So obviously, guys, this is very subjective, but many things we do on this podcast are subjective. But just something, obviously, that I've been thinking about is, we're through the draft. We're through the earlier part of the offseason. We're getting into OTAs, rookie minicamp. We're going to start seeing more and more things, ahead of training camp in, almost 2 months, hard to believe. But as you guys kind of sit and think, like, when people, whether it be pundits or just things you see and hear, like, and things that you think about, what are 3 things that people are getting right about the Bengals, whether it's predictions on players, the season, odds? Like, what are some things that you guys can say with certainty that, people are getting right about the Bengals in the here and now?
Yeah, I think, it's really kind of hard to see, another team really kind of coming in and taking the crown from them. I think, frankly, I think the Ravens are probably second. If I had to,
the AFC North crown.
Yes, excuse me, sorry, the AFC North crown. You look at kind of the betting odds. I think, there's probably a lot of, there's probably a lot of pull there to say, okay, look, the Browns are going to have Deshaun, and the Steelers went, what are they, 9-8 or whatever they went with Kenny Pickett in his first year, better. They just had an offensive lineman come in. They just drafted another corner. Like, they got better. Like, I think you could kind of make that, make those trendy picks, make the sexy pick with the Ravens and say, oh, well, now, they have Lamar and they were going to win the division before Lamar got hurt. Like, I think you could kind of do all that. But I think, I just think you kind of reach a point, and I think Bengals fans got to be aware of this. Like, you kind of reach a point when you're this good, where people kind of stop talking about you in a way, just because it happens every year. Like, you've been to back-to-back AFC Championship games, you've been to a Super Bowl. This year, I mean, I think the trendy pick is going to be the Jaguars. It's going to be a team that you don't see coming. That's what everybody loves to talk about, and I don't know. I just think when you kind of look at the betting odds, when you look at, just for the AFC North specifically, but then for the AFC, I think, people aren't really understating their kind of level of talent that they have on the roster. They were a couple of plays away from going to the Super Bowl again. So I think the number one thing, it's pretty basic, but I think the number one thing people are kind of getting right is the fact that this team is going to be very, very good again.
Good again to win the AFC North? Like, do you believe it's right to say the Bengals are AFC North favorites?
Oh, they betting favorites. I think they are, and then I think I think they are the favorites. Like, the division is going to be very, very crowded this year. I think you kind of look at some of the divisions across the league, and there's a decent case to be made that the AFC North is going to be the toughest division in football from top to bottom. I know the AFC West has Kansas City, the defending Super Bowl champions. You probably have two better teams in the NFC East with Philly and Dallas, but I just think that this division is going to be really good. I wouldn't be stunned if the Ravens come in and win the division at 13-4 and the Bengals finish 12-5 or something like that. It wouldn't be shocking, but I think you kind of have to list them as favorites for the division and one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl. Like they're just a really good team, and it sounds boring. Although the topic isn't boring, it sounds boring to it's kind of ho hum. This team's going to be really good again. But you kind of look at some of the betting odds and things like that, and I think it's pretty fair.
Mike, is that fair? Do you think people like Andrew and others are getting it right when they say that?
Yeah. I don't think that's going out on a limb. I mean, that's pretty. What is that, like a lukewarm take instead of a hot take? I mean, it's not
lukewarm. Is lukewarm the right word?
I don't know.
Mr. Grammar.
Milquetoast. It's just a very tepid.
Tepid.
Tepid's better.
Tepid. Okay, like that.
So I'd like to hear like a bold take of what people are getting right. I'd like to hear something. Put yourself out on a limb there.
Me or just everybody else?
You. What people are getting right?
Oh God.
Yeah, Andrew. You know what? Put yourself on a limb. Do it, big fella. Put yourself on a limb right now, like Mike said.
In terms of oh God,
a bold take that you think is an accurate take that people are getting right.
Come back to me. Let me think about it.
How about this? Instead of you coming up with one, let me ask you this. Like, I know we've talked about this a lot, but since we're talking bold, go big or go home, I mean, although they are not the betting odd favorites to win the Super Bowl, are people right when they say the Bengals will win the Super Bowl next year? I know we have a long way to go before we get to the season, but right now, are people right when they say the Bengals will win the Super Bowl?
Well, I don't think people say that. I think that they're one of the favorites, if not the favorite, based on how the offseason unfolded. I think I wrote about this to our texters. In terms of the off seasons for the contenders in the AFC North, I'd still think that that their off season was like a B, but that was ahead of everybody else's off season that they're competing with directly. So, I mean, I think they could have been bolder and taken, more steps forward to sort of solidify that. But I think that, they had a more impactful offseason than the Chiefs, the Bills, and obviously I think they're the favorite of the North. So, I mean, when you consider that, I mean, I think that, it's not unfair to label them as the Super Bowl favorites or preseason favorites for whatever that's worth.
So here's an even better question, since you mentioned the AFC North, and I'm actually with you, by the way. Whatever you graded them with a B, I think that's how I graded them after the draft, which I also wrote about around this time last week. But let me ask you this. So we know Lamar, we haven't actually talked about this on this podcast, by the way, and we'll talk about it some more later, but Lamar's not leaving the AFC North for at least another 5 years. He's hanging out in Baltimore, so Burrow versus Jackson, we're going to see that for a good bit. I mean, you have Deshaun Watson, like Andrew mentioned. Kenny Pickett, with all due respect to him, he's got a ways to go. But is Joe Burrow the best quarterback in the AFC North, or do you have to lend some credence to Lamar Jackson? Like, are people right when they say Burrow himself is the king of the North?
Well, that's a remarkably easy sentence to say that he's the best quarterback in the AFC North now. I mean, is Patrick Mahomes the best quarterback in the AFC West? Like, I don't know. Lamar's really good, and I think the last 2 years have kind of soured people on Lamar for whatever reason. I guess I know the reason. It's because he's gotten hurt. But
And he's had an interesting saga the last couple months.
Yeah, the Ravens were. I mean, it's kind of easy to forget, but the Ravens were actually scoring like 27 points a game with Lamar at the helm at quarterback, and I mean, pretty much us three at receiver. They weren't really doing a whole heck of a lot in the passing game, and they were still winning games. And they were still scoring points, and then Lamar went down, and their entire season went to hell. So Lamar's really good, but yeah, of course Joe Burrow is the best quarterback in the AFC North. I mean, to me, that's not even a question.
We'll see.
And to be fair, I thought
fans might say otherwise.
I thought it was going into the year. Like if you would have told me week 1, 2022 before the Steeler game, you get to pick a franchise quarterback, I was taking Lamar over Burrow. I think that, I thought that Lamar gave you more. I mean, he still gives you that element, but yeah, I mean, at this point, I don't know how you could say anybody but Burrow.
Do you agree, Mike? I mean, he's one-time MVP, but still.
The numbers and success that, over the last 2 years, I think, tell the story. I mean, I don't think, like I said, that's a pretty straightforward, simple take, I think. I don't think you'd get much pushback.
I'm trying to think of something that would get pushback from you guys, because I feel like I'm so good at doing this on this podcast, and I'm just like, why am I not getting pushback from Mike and Andrew as to whether like there's a bold take that people are getting right? I guess. Okay, here's a broader question. We talked about Lamar versus Burrow. I mean, look at the Browns. They still have Nick Chubb. They have Deshaun Watson. They got those receivers. Lamar has OBJ. I mean, they have Zay Flowers. Lamar's under the helm, like I said. Can make a case for. Obviously, the Steelers still having guys like Najee Harris, but like, is it right to say the Bengals have the best offense in the AFC North, or do you think, the Browns have a little bit of an advantage with Nick Chubb, or maybe the Ravens might actually get something out of OBJ that we're not seeing? Like, do the Bengals have the best offense in the AFC North right now?
Well, yeah, I think so, but I mean, I think the different question is, are they? I wouldn't think they're the most well-rounded offense of the group, but I think they're the most, the highest ceiling, and obviously coming off the production they've had the last 2 years under Burrow, Zach Taylor, Brian Callahan, triumphant, and I just think that, the concern I think is that you lack that sort of balance, but they've kind of shown that it's not sort of necessary. So I think they're the best offense, but just maybe not, with the asterisk that they're not the most well-rounded offense.
Andrew, would you say Mike is making a better clarification there, that they're just not the best well-rounded like you mentioned, or do you think there's more to it than that?
Well, yeah, so they're certainly not the most well-rounded because, assuming that the Ravens passing offense, gets better, I mean, you're basically replacing. I mean, think about what we saw in that playoff game that was kind of a disaster, where you don't really have a passing attack to speak of. Well, you're changing the quarterback and you're changing the top 3 receivers because Bateman's coming back from injury. Now you have OBJ. Now you have Zay Flowers. You still have Mark Andrews, but they could also still run the ball. Lamar's running ability is really unique. J.K. Dobbins is a really, really good running back.
Forgot about him.
You've got Patrick Ricard as kind of a fullback, and not many teams use a fullback, so he kind of offers some, so is it just some positional mismatches there when you have a team that's trying to spread you out, and then you have a fullback coming up the way. So yeah, they're not the most well-rounded, but I think this kind of goes back into my point here, where it's like it gets boring to talk about, right? Because like we're sitting here like, oh well, are the Ravens the most well-rounded, or are the Browns because they can run the ball the best? Like the Bengals are just a really good team, and you kind of like a hot take of like a bold proclamation or whatever you want to say about the Bengals almost has to be they're not as good as people think because everybody thinks they're already really, really good. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just kind of feels like everybody already thinks so highly of them. Kind of the only way to go against the grain is to talk negatively about them. And frankly, like, there's a lot there. The running game is what you're going to do if you want to do that. But there's not a lot else that you could really pick nits with.
Well, on the defensive side, I know we've talked a lot about offense, so let's kind of flip it to the defense. Like, people are saying with Myles Murphy, DJ Turner, like, post-draft, and we've talked about it, but I've seen a lot of people saying, oh, like the Bengals will have that pass rush juice. They're going to have that speed in the secondary that's going to, like people say, speed kills. Like that, they're going to have that with all the speed they have with, Cheeto, assuming he's healthy, Cam Taylor-Britt, DJ Turner, etc. I mean, here's a bolder proclamation. Will the Bengals defense be better in 2023 than it was in 2022? Like, is that a bold proclamation?
I think it's bold. That's a good question because I think like this defense was so good, especially in the beginning part of the year, as the offense kind of really struggled to find its rhythm. I mean, you think back to the first couple weeks of the year. I mean, God, how many times did you hear the phrase like too high safety and things like that? And it just kind of felt like the Bengals couldn't find their way out of that, and they really couldn't beat it because their offense was so predicated on winning deep balls and winning with home run plays in 2021 that, when teams took those away, it was a little bit of an adjustment for them this year. And then once they figured that out, it was kind of off to the races. But their defense was really good. The thing is with the pass rush, I think way more depends on Myles Murphy than people are talking about. So, I think the way to phrase it is like,
will Myles Murphy make the defense better?
Yeah, the pass. So I think the way to phrase, people are getting right that the pass rush is going to be better because if you look at some of the the sack numbers were not very good. I mean, they were 29th in the league. They had 30 sacks. Your top two sack getters, Trey Hendrickson and Sam Hubbard, 14.5 out of your 30 sacks. Like, that's 14.5 out of 30 sacks is 14.5 by your two guys is fine. You just need more from the depth guys. And I think you kind of saw an effort there with, you signed Terrell Basham, you draft a guy in the first round. I think there was a little bit of an effort to try and boost your edge rush there. So I think, kind of the way to say it is people are getting right that the pass rush is going to be better, but I think how good depends on Myles Murphy. If Myles Murphy comes in and gives you 3 or 4 sacks, it'll be better. But if he can come in and kind of be a situational rusher where, he comes in on third downs or, even if, he comes in when Hendrickson or Hubbard goes out, if he can get you like 7, then I think we're talking about a whole different ballgame. So the pass rush is going to be better, but I think Myles Murphy kind of has the key to how good it's really going to be.
Do you agree with that, Mike? I mean, do you think is it too much to focus only on Myles Murphy? Or if you're talking strictly about pass rush, it's like, okay, that's fair, but, how would you kind of summarize like what Andrew said from your thoughts?
Well, I think it depends on how healthy the group is, too. I mean, Sam Hubbard missed a little bit of time at the end of the year. Trey Hendrickson kind of felt like he was never 100% the entire year. Like, how effective is he? I forgot if what is he? What is his age now? He's 28, so he just turned 28 in December. So
about to turn 29.
He's had a lot of work the last couple of years. Obviously, he's been effective, but can he sort of replicate the season he had 2 years ago? That would obviously be in and of itself a huge boost without even having Myles Murphy do anything. But can he stay physically able to do that when teams are throwing at what the triple teaming them, double teaming them, like Luan Rumo said? I don't know. So I think Myles Murphy's presence could make Hendrickson more effective because then he doesn't have to worry about that all game long. He gets more rest. So we'll see. It might just sort of have a snowball effect that Murphy's presence kind of opens it up for some of those other guys too.
Here's an interesting question I was thinking about with the secondary since we're talking about the pass rush. So, for a fact, Trey Flowers is not coming back. He just signed with the Atlanta Falcons today, which he had visited, I think, a few weeks ago. I mean, we've talked about Eli Apple. That's not happening either. But that doesn't even matter for what I'm about to ask because here's the thing. Like, Trey Flowers was your tight end guy. Like, when you're in 2-minute drills and you need somebody on Travis Kelce, that was Trey Flowers. Or Mark Andrews. That was him. Cameron Brate. Like, other good tight ends that they covered just whenever they played opponents. So he's gone. And I wonder – here's a good question, and it's kind of related to the defense here. It's not much of a tangent, but it's worth asking. Who do you think is, like, the defender that they put on Travis Kelce, like, on third downs or, like, in 2-minute drills? Like, do you think they get, like, a Dax Hill to do that? Like, he did a few times last year. Do you think, people like Tyson Anderson compete to do that? Or Do you think they get Akeem Davis-Gaither to do that and maybe make those packages unique? Like, what do you think they do there? Because I think that could actually say a lot about how they cover certain guys. Like, you got to cover Kelsey. You got to cover Andrews. Like, those are good players you can't overlook who beat them a couple times in each time they played them. Like, what do you guys think happens there?
Well, I think you have it kind of the premise wrong. I think what you use defender as a singular term. Those are guys that you have to double and you have to kind of send different waves at them. You don't really have anybody in that cornerback room that can match up, size wise with a tight end like that, without Flowers. So, I think that, when you kind of look like Cam Taylor-Britt, he's not, they don't really have anybody like that, like Chidobe Awuzie. They don't really have like a 6'3" guy, 6'3", 220. They don't have that body type in the cornerbacks room. And frankly, they don't really have it in the safety room. So to me, that just kind of screams like, all right, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to send a linebacker on him, maybe safety help over the top. Like that, I don't know if that particularly matters. I mean, maybe that's a place where Jordan Battle comes in, but you need to double those guys. So I don't know if it's one particular guy there.
Yeah, I mean, Flowers didn't play in the conference championship. I was looking at the regular season match.
He did.
Oh, did he?
He did play on special teams. I know that, and I'm pretty sure he covered Kelsey a few times.
I was looking at the coverage matchup. It didn't look like it. He only played 9 snaps, so no.
So special teams.
And then the regular season matchup, he wasn't matched up against him he only played 6 snaps. So I really don't think that's a big deal. I think they had moved on to sort of giving a lot of those snaps to Mike Hilton and doing different things. I don't think he was as important to the game plan last year. To worry about, specific matchups like that.
Just something I was thinking about because I was talking with some of the media guys in the locker room, like, hey, so Trey Flowers is gone. Like, who do you think is kind of that, I like to call it third down, tight end slot corner? Because, I mean, that's what he was. But like you said, I mean, it was only occasional. And he did okay in those situations. There's times where he didn't, like the Ravens game on Sunday night. Just something I was thinking about. But we're going to keep thinking about something more interesting when we come back because in case you guys forgot, I heard the NFL schedule is coming out pretty soon, Thursday to be exact. What does that mean for the Bengals? What do we think is going to happen without getting into too much detail? We'll let you know when we come back right here on the Strictly Stripes podcast.
Hey guys, if you love college football, we think you'll like the College Football Survivor Show. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and my co-host Shahan Jeharaja and I, each week we talk about the best programs, best coaches, best players in the sport. It's all football, no off-field stuff, no legislation. It's about the teams that are going to matter most in the playoff race. Will Georgia three-peat? Always on the lookout for angry Bama. The Big Ten, Ohio State and Michigan battling at the top and Penn State on the rise. The Pac-12 matters again, not just USC, but Oregon and Washington as well. The playoff is expanding. Expand your podcast listening. Try the College Football Survivor Show wherever you find podcasts.
And thanks for staying with us on the Strictly Stripes podcast. So we talked about things that people are getting right about the Bengals, and I think the overall theme from all three of us is, a team like that is just so good that you kind of have to focus on what are people getting wrong about them, which that's something we're going to talk about later because, like I said, that in itself is a lengthy discussion. But I think another interesting discussion to have just based on what we heard from Orlando Brown and Mike Hilton in the locker room today is the Bengals are very excited to play the Chiefs. As we've mentioned on this podcast, I mean, we did a whole podcast on this for those who don't know. I mean, on the Bengals-Chiefs rivalry, where it stands in comparison to other rivalries and, the fact that they're going to play them in Arrowhead in 2023. When that is, we don't know. We're going to find out about that Thursday and talk about that. But, I mean, one thing Mike Hilton said was, he was asked, like, do you think Bengals Chiefs should be the opening night game? He said that's the game everybody wants to see. I don't think that that's going to happen. I really just think that, because if you think about it, the Chiefs, no matter who they play, they could play the Houston Texans. They could play the Bears for all that matters. And people are going to watch that game. Ratings-wise, I don't think playing the Bengals would make much more of a difference. Or even, heck, they could play the Eagles, who they're supposed to play at home next year. Like, I don't think it matters. I don't think that's going to happen. But, like, obviously Orlando Brown was like, yeah, I mean, he would love a matchup like that to be a big-time game. So as far as a big-time game goes, like, what are you thinking? Monday Night Football, Sunday Night Football, like Thursday Night Football? Like, where do you think a game like that gets slaughtered? And what week do you think would be good for that?
Week is probably too much of a stretch in terms of, kind of when you think that game is going to happen. You kind of look at the last couple of years. They played the game in the 2021-22 season, the year the Bengals went to the Super Bowl. I believe technically that game was like January 2nd or something.
Yes. Yes.
So they technically played in 2022 twice. Then they played in December. I think that could be an early season game, but yeah, you're right. You kind of look at some of the kickoff games for the last couple of years. I mean, last year was Bills Rams. You had kind of the Super Bowl favorite and in the Buffalo Bills coming into the Super Bowl host, obviously. Then you get Cowboys Bucks the year before. You get Chiefs Texans the year before. You can kind of go down the list. Like they're gonna put a good matchup on the field, but I don't know. You're like you said, you're gonna get eyes on this game no matter what. And I just think it kind of makes sense to say, okay, like let's put a game up here that's good, but let's not burn one here. Here's the Chiefs' home schedule. They play the AFC West, obviously, so that's the Broncos, Chargers, and the Raiders. Then they play the Bills, the Dolphins, the Bears, the Lions, then the Bengals and Eagles. Like this to me like screams Dolphins or Bills. Just you look at, I mean, the Dolphins would be a really intriguing matchup. The Bills, obviously, they've played some great games. I don't know. Like the Eagles game, that game is going to be on Fox because that's an NFC road game. That's a game that you would assume Fox would be all over for wanting to take. That's not something you want to give up. The Fox doesn't get many chances at the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. You would assume that that's something that they would want. So I don't know. I think Bengals Chiefs is going to be prime time. I think you could pretty much make that lock of the century. And maybe not, because I guess technically you could say a 4:30 CBS slot, but yeah, you're gonna get that game with a prime time audience, whether that's 4:30 CBS, a Monday night game, a Sunday night game, a Thursday night game. It doesn't matter. You're gonna get a big time audience for that. I just don't think opening week is the week to do that, even if it would be fun as hell.
I mean, I think it's one of three games. It's either the Eagles, Bills, or Bengals. I mean, being the opener. It's going to be a home game.
I would throw the Dolphins into there too.
Because of Tyreek?
Well, you got Tyreek, but the Dolphins are a fun team. The Dolphins are a unique team. And
that's true. Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, they had a really good offseason. They traded for Jalen Ramsey. You have the receivers that they do. I think that you can kind of market that, because the league is obviously going to want to market a big game back. You're not going to throw the Bears out there or anything like that, And I just think that you don't want to do I like I said with Fox, I don't think Fox is gonna give up the Eagles as best they can. They're really going to try to lean on the league, I would think, for keeping that game on their network. And like with the Bengals, I mean, that's a game where if they play that game Sunday at 1, Monday night at 8:30, Wednesday at 8 a.m., like that game's getting ratings no matter when it happens. So I just think that that's a game that you can schedule later and know that you're going to have a pretty much guaranteed absolute, this is a really good game. Because, I mean, we all know it. Like sometimes these primetime games look good now, and then in October you're like, holy crap, this one's going to suck. It's just the way the cookie crumbles. And I think that Bengals Chiefs, is going to be a gold mine. So you'd be okay with kind of scheduling that for later down the line.
I don't know. I kind of disagree. I think that you just schedule. I think you'd schedule that high profile matchup in the highest profile place. And like you said, you don't really know what's going to happen. What if the quarterback's going to get injured? I mean, I think you put it week 1, there's already that excitement built in. Considering these two teams have played each other so much the last couple of years. I don't know. I don't think they're going to get ratings no matter what throughout the whole season, usually with big games. I don't see any reason why that would sort of make them nervous about putting this one out front.
I think to Andrew's point, like, you know, I guess to both of your all's points, technically. I mean, like, I think about the Bills-Rams game, for example. Like, Rams were defending world champs. They hosted the Bills. You look at it as, defending world champs versus, like, I think a lot of people had the Bills as, like, AFC favorites last year over the Bengals, definitely over the Chiefs because of, like, the whole Tyreek left narrative. And, I mean, look at how that game went. Like, that was the precursor to, like, the LA Rams this season. Like, I don't know if I mentioned this. The Rams had the worst record of any defending world champion in all of pro sports ever. Like, no pro sports team did as badly as the Rams did the year after winning a world championship. So the Lakers, the Celtics, the Yankees, no one ever did that bad. Like, that was pretty bad. So, like, imagine if you said, let's wait and put that game in October, November if they're playoff contenders. I mean, the Rams season was, I think that's when their season ended. Like, that already kind of told me, like, this team's not going to even compete for the playoffs. But again, that's not going to be the case with the Bengals Chiefs. Like, unless, God forbid, one of those two quarterbacks this season goes to oblivion because of injury or whatever reason, or you have like Jamar Chase or Travis Kelce go down. I don't know. I'm just saying, I don't think that would happen, but, you know, I don't know. It could go either way. I do think, like, Mike makes the case of, yeah, I mean, best game, best opener, but then it's also like, Andrew said, do you want to burn that game when, like, because take the Bengals Chiefs examples, like, they've played traditionally later in the year, December last year, January the year before, and then the two conference championships. Like, these are two playoff competing teams who have maybe a number one seed on the line. Like, that, a December game could determine a number one seed. So I know a week is a stretch, like Andrew said, but I'd say anything past like week 10, week 11, maybe. I mean, I'd say no, week 12. Past week 12 is your best bet, just based on the trends and where these teams are headed.
Typically, you want to put those games as divisional games later in the year. You know, you want to have, especially if the AFC North is going to be competitive this year, you want, you know, the Bengals playing the Browns on December whatever, and then follow that
like
with
last
the Steelers,
year, yeah,
and then follow that with the Ravens. Like, you want to kind of stack those divisional games at the end of the year. But yeah, you know, actually, as we were talking about this, the league just sent a memo that the schedule is going to be released Thursday at 8 p.m. You know, there was kind of talk that maybe it could get delayed, but Thursday at 8 p.m. is when it's going to happen. There will be a couple of games announced on the 10th, which is Wednesday. The international games, those will be announced on May 10th. The Black Friday games, something new that the NFL is doing that I think sucks, is happening on May 10th. They'll announce that one. And then they'll select. All it says is select individual games on Fox and Friends and CBS Mornings. So my guess is that is going to be your, you know, if it's on Fox and CBS, those are going to be the big games. So to me, that is like a, hey, if the Bengals are going to play the Chiefs on a Sunday at 4:30, or the Eagles are going to play the Chiefs on, you know, on Fox at whatever time, that's going to be when you figure it out. So we'll have a few games on Wednesday and the rest of the schedule Thursday.
And we're going to break all of that down right here on the Strictly Stripes podcast. So once we know who, when, and where the Bengals are playing, well, we know who, but when and where they're playing them. But to kind of wrap up here, you know, because we have to wrap up with just random, silly wackiness at the end, because that's how we do. But we've talked about food, things you like, things you guys don't like on this podcast, but I was just in Detroit this weekend, which I know, Mike, you lived in Michigan for a good part of your life, so you might agree with me when I say this. I was there for just a religious conference with my cousins. It was an Islamic conference in suburbs of Detroit. Obviously, for those who don't know, a lot of the suburbs are predominantly Arab and Middle Eastern, so I had the most amazing Middle Eastern food, and I'm not exaggerating as someone who's Arab, some of the most Middle Eastern amazing food that I've ever had this past weekend. So I want to ask you guys, like, are there cities where it's just like if I ask you right now, what is the city you go to for the best food? Like, is that too broad of a question, or are you guys like looking for specific things in the city? Like, does Chicago have the best A food, and then Cleveland has the best B food? Like I guess in general, where is the best food? Like for you guys, where is the best food out there? Because Detroit, I slept on Detroit's Middle Eastern food. I did not realize it was that good.
Well, I mean, I think if you kind of label it as a city, you know, this city has the best food. I think you're kind of doing it I think you're not doing it justice. Like, you're not going to go to, New York and be like, all right, time to eat, I don't know. New York has really good food. That was a bad example.
Like Texas barbecue in New York.
You're not going to Cleveland. Like, with all due respect to Cleveland, you're not going to Cleveland being like, all right, time to eat barbecue. Like, if you're in, it's kind of, for me, it's a kind of where you are moment. Like, we were in Dallas this past year. That was week 2, week 3?
That was week 2.
Week 2. Yeah, we were in Dallas, and I mean, that was probably the best barbecue I've ever had in my life. That was really great. Nashville barbecue was really good. I really like New Orleans. New Orleans was very good. I've been to LA just, on vacation before. LA has really good food. So I think, it just depends. Like, if you go into a certain city and are like, yeah, this city has great food, and you just like speak broadly, I think you're not really being as specific as you can, because certain cities are known for different things, and going to Florida and asking for a steak is probably not your best bet when there's seafood right there. So I don't know. I just think it's not so much a city thing as it is kind of a regional thing.
You didn't answer the question. You didn't say where you get your food from.
Well, where's the best? I gave a bunch of places. You said where do you get?
So just in general, like if I have to make you pick one city, which city has the best food?
If I had to pick one,
just pick one. Yeah. I love putting people on the spot. I'm thinking you have the bold takes I couldn't get earlier.
I wish I was in Dallas longer.
Yeah,
but
that's a good choice.
I think barbecue's probably, just the brisket I had there was so good. I'm gonna go with Texas and Dallas specifically, and I'm sure there are people, like, if there's anybody listening to this who's like from Houston or from Austin or wherever, or El Paso or something, I'm sure that they're upset. But Dallas, for me, the barbecue was great. I had really good ribs there too. Just the smoked meats and stuff were great. So I'm gonna say Dallas.
Well, it would also depend on like how many cities you've been to. Like, how much time you spent in them. So, I don't know. I Vegas is my answer, but Vegas is the answer for a lot of things. It's just the concentrated area of top end restaurants. You really can't beat it.
I think for me, and Mike, you're gonna get giddy when I say this. I think it's Chicago. I've had the best experiences in Chicago. Like, if I want Arabic food, check. If I want like burgers and like, chicken sandwiches, like just chicken in general, to be honest, like, cause there's a large like Pakistani and like Arab population where I get a lot of like Muslim slaughtered chicken and beef, like burgers, like Lombard, Oakbrook Terrace, like Bridgeview. I'm sure those places.
Yeah, but none of that's considered. Lombard's not Chicago. Lombard's like as far away from Chicago. It's like being in a different planet.
Wait. So what part of Chicago did you grow up in?
I did. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, so that's not. Nobody would consider Lombard Chicago.
Really? Because I've heard the opposite. Like, all my friends are like, "Oh, I went to Chicago and I went to Lombard and did X, Y, and Z." It's not that far from downtown.
And went to Lombard, then they are geographically
Muslim friends. Well, yeah, because my Muslim friends want specific food from Lombard. Yeah.
Right. Then they didn't go to Chicago. They went to the Chicago suburbs, and not even a very good suburb.
You don't like Lombard was nice, or I guess it was like Oakbrook Terrace and Lombard. Those were pretty nice.
Oakbrook's nice, but that's the suburbs. That's not Chicago.
Yeah, right now I pulled it up on maps. Assuming it's Lombard, like the one that's near Naperville.
Yes.
Yes.
45 minutes. 45 minutes. 21 miles.
Yeah,
no, that's cap. It can't be more than 25 minutes from downtown, because I went to downtown when I was there.
It's 1,000%.
That's what my phone says. It's 45 minutes
downtown. Usually farther because of traffic.
Probably with traffic. Without traffic, it's not more than 25.
There's
without
barely
traffic.
any time without traffic to do that drive, and it's
west of O'Hare.
I was there on a weekend afternoon. It was fine for me.
It's west of O'Hare, west of Midway. That's not like. I don't know. That's not.
So let me ask you this, Andrew. By that logic, the Cowboys don't play in Dallas. They play in Arlington, and I would assume you guys got food in Arlington. So can't you say that you got the best barbecue?
No, actually, the place that we went was downtown Dallas. We were downtown Dallas.
And I thought was waiting for that get you moment. It just ruined it for me. Well, I
Well,
wasn't.
also,
I have
and
the-
like the Texas Rangers, like they still call it like the ballpark in Arlington. Like places can call it different things. Like
True. Well, that's a recent name though. They didn't always call it that, but I guess
they've
it proves
always
your
called
point.
it that.
No, well, they just built a new one. Like
Well, yeah, but
before
they've
the new
always
one, they
called
built
it
it.
the ballpark in Arlington.
Like the formal title? No, it was like Globe
it's
Life
not the
Park.
name of the stadium. Like I don't know what it's called now, but
I don't follow baseball anymore.
yeah, I don't know what it's called now, but yeah, it was always kind of referred to as the ballpark in Arlington.
I mean, I guess I don't know, but like, I can't win with you people, man. So Cincinnati, for example, there's gonna be a lot of Cincinnati people listening. So like, if I go somewhere in like Westchester, which for those who don't know, it's like on the outer suburbs north
the
of
suburbs
275.
of Cincinnati.
So if I got some food in Westchester, I didn't get it in Cincinnati. I got it in Westchester, even though I consider that a suburb within Cincinnati.
Right, it's a suburb of Cincinnati.
Yeah, Mohammed.
So also in Cincinnati, it's a suburb of Cincinnati.
Westchester's 33 minutes from my apartment right now as I record this. It's 20 miles north.
Wait, you live in Oakley. It can't be that far. Not to give away your location.
That's what my phone says. My phone does.
I live in northern Kentucky, which is
you
even farther.
You live in a different state. Like,
and guess what? It takes me 25 minutes to get there, so you should be even closer.
Well, I hate to break it to you, but that's what it says. Yeah, from Paycor Stadium.
We're taping this around 5 o'clock where the traffic is horrible.
Yeah, from Paycor Stadium, it says 34 minutes and 21 miles. So, yeah,
right
suburb
now.
of Cincinnati.
Well, I think, how did we go from like talking about food to debating like whether a suburb is a city or a city has a suburb? But you know, that's why I love, this is the wackiness I'm telling you guys about. This is why we are the best podcast. This is why we rock. And part of why we rock, to wrap things up, is we rock because we have Cincinnati Football Insider, the best subtext service out there where we text you, the fan, the reader, the listener, whatever you want to call yourself. We break news to you before Twitter, before the web, before you even get on this podcast and hit the mic. If you want to sign up and be a part of the cool kids club of all Bengals fans, go to cleveland.com/Bengals. Click on the blue banner at the top of the page you see. It's a 2-week free trial to start. After that, it's $4.99 a month. And I promise you, it is the best $4.99 a month investment you will make with that much money. So sign up at cleveland.com/Bengals and be part of the Cool Kids Club. Stay with us. We're going to keep breaking down what folks are getting right or maybe not getting right about the Bengals and talking more about the future of Joe Burrow's contract, what that means with respect to guys like Lamar Jackson, and much more. But once again, for myself, Andrew, and Mike, I'm Muhammad Ahmad. Have a nice Monday. And, Lombard is in Chicago.